Hello, I'm Greg Jamian, and welcome to Boomer Health at Home. As more baby boomers receive medical services at home, there are many questions that pop up that require sometimes quick answers. I have put together a series of short segments with healthcare professionals that will help explain how things work along with answers to common questions found in home-based care. I hope you find the following information helpful.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Boomer Health at Home. I'm your host, Ryan Donnellan. Today we're going to talk about some of the dangers that we all face in the elements during the winter seasons. Our guest today is none other than Janet Alderman, RN and infusion specialist for AmeriCare Medical Incorporated. Janet, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Janet, we have all heard the term frostbite. Now, what exactly is that in medical terms?
Frostbite is when there's actual damage to the cells and the tissue and like in your fingers, your toes, your cheeks when you've been exposed to the cold.
Okay, and so those are the areas most affected. Are there any other areas that...
Really anything that can come in contact. It's mostly like your fingers and your toes and your cheeks because of the blood flow. So that's what happens when you're out in the cold and you've been exposed for too long. The blood stops flowing to those areas because your body's trying to conserve all the blood flow to the main heart and lungs. So the little capillaries where you have your little small blood flow to your fingers and your toes, that's why those things get affected first.
Oh, great. So the body's trying to protect the heart, but in the meantime, it's leaving our hands and stuff out to the elements. Okay.
Right.
So now, let's say that you do receive frostbite. Now that's something you're frozen. How does the body respond to that, and what does prolonged exposure look like to a patient?
Well, the first initial, there's two ways that you can have frostbite, where you actually have damage to the cells, and then there's water loss in the cells, and then the cells kind of shrivel up and dehydrate and die, right? And then there's also where there's actual damage to the blood flow that gets there, and the blood vessels break, and that cause more serious damage. So that's why there's different stages of frostbite.
Oh, okay. What are the stages of frostbite?
Well, the initial stage, what you'll see is like where your skin gets blanched or actually kind of white in color, and you get the burning, numbness, and tingling in those areas that are affected, your fingers, your toes, your cheeks. Sometimes you get itching. That's the first sign of frostbite.
Okay. Oops, sorry.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
The second stage is where you actually get where the skin becomes, the white turns into yellow. It's almost waxy looking. And then there also sometimes can be blisters. And then the third final stage is when there's permanent damage, and it's where the area actually becomes blackened or necrotic looking.
Wow. So now once this occurs, can each of those stages be treated, and at like what point and how do they treat it, really?
Yeah, definitely in the beginning stages can be treated. The second stage or the third, when it's becoming more necrotic tissue and the tissue's actually died, it is more of a serious condition.
Okay, and what do you do if you suspect frostbite? Is this something that you should let go, or is it that you can treat at home, or should...
Well, if it's the initial stages, like where you just have the blanching of the skin, where it's starting that initial part, the numbness, tingling, that kind of stuff, the first thing you want to do is remove any wet clothing from that area, kind of try and re-warm it, elevate the area to increase that blood flow that you're getting to that area. And if it's not improving, then you want to definitely seek medical attention. it's something that maybe a doctor should look at if it's not improving within, an hour of being inside. If you're still having that numbness, tingling, it's still blanched, you need to seek medical attention.
That's good to know. That's always my struggle. It's like, when do I actually go to the doctor? Am I overreacting? So that's good guide to know.
And it's usually not even a phone call. If you suspect it, because the doctor's not going to know unless they actually see your hands, your feet, so they can see what a level of damage has been there.
So this is not a WebMD type thing. You got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Now, is there anyone? So if we'll take precautions ourselves now with that advice. Who is most at risk of frostbite? Is there anyone we should be looking out for to?
Definitely like the homeless people, this time of year when it's colder out and they're on the streets and they're exposed to it, they're more at risk. Elderly people are at risk because maybe in their homes, if they don't have proper heat, electricity, shelter, those kind of things, they can be at risk for it. They also have decreased sensation just because of our body as we age. Elderly, you don't have that, you don't notice the change in temperatures as much. So sometimes they won't realize that their feet or hands are cold. And also people with diabetes have decreased sensation, so they might not notice that their feet are cold. So those are people who drink a lot of alcohol, alcoholics, because they don't have the decreased blood flow too. And of course mentally impaired people that can't make those good judgments.
Okay.
But they need to get out of the cold.
Yeah. Now, of course, besides moving to Florida altogether just to stay warm, is there any other additional methods you can take to prevent getting frostbite?
Oh, definitely. You want to make sure that you dress for the weather. Dress in layers so you can take different layers off if something gets wet. If you're outside, snowmobiling or skiing or anything like that, make sure that you dress properly. Always have mittens. Mittens are better than gloves because it keeps the fingers together, more warming than gloves. Your fingers are separated. You don't get as good warmth there. Wearing a couple pairs of socks or shoes is always good. Cover your head, wear that hat, your ears, wear those earmuffs, that kind of stuff, because those are the places that are prone to getting frostbite. Always, when you're outside, doing any activity else outside, be with a friend. So that if you're starting to get cold, have that cell phone there, call for help so they can help you, that too. Avoid alcohol and smoking because that decreases the blood flow in those areas.
Oh.
So when you're out doing those fun winter activities, make sure you're not tipping up the bottle.
Yeah, okay. That'll be a tough one to give up, but I think the end result would be worth it. Anyways, that's really all the time we have today. I just want to thank you for coming out and giving us some more information on this. And again, we emphasize if you suspect that you have frostbite, please seek medical attention. If anyone has any additional questions, is there a number they could call to?
Yes, you can always contact any of the nurses at Ameristaff at 248-288-2270.
Well, and thank you for tuning in to this episode of Boomer Health, and to you folks back home, stay healthy, Michigan.